Some of the quietest, kindest people don't look like they're struggling. They look calm, put together, even strong, but that's not always peace. Sometimes, it's just years of learning how to carry things alone. You stay quiet. You don't complain. You don't want to make things heavier for anyone else. So you hold it in again and again until one day, you don't even know how to explain what's wrong anymore. And that's the part no one sees. Because when your pain stays quiet for too long, it doesn't just hurt, it starts changing you. That's why people like you need God more than you realize. Not because you're weak, but because you've been strong alone for too long. People trust you. They come to you when things fall apart. You listen. You stay calm. You don't make it about yourself. And after a while, that becomes your role. The one who understands, the one who doesn't overreact, the one who can handle it. But here's what no one really asks. Who listens to you? Because being the quiet, kind person often means you get used to holding things in. You let things go. You let people slide. You tell yourself it's not a big deal. And maybe at first, it isn't. But over time, those small things don't disappear. They stay. They stack up. They sit somewhere inside you without a name. And the strange part is, you don't even notice how heavy it's getting anymore. You just keep going, like nothing's wrong. People think you're strong, not because they've asked, but because you don't show anything that says otherwise. You don't argue much. You don't make scenes. You don't demand attention. So they assume you're fine. And the quieter you are, the more they believe it. You become the easy one to be around. The one who understands. The one who doesn't take things personally. At least, that's how it looks. But what they don't see is what it takes to stay that way. Every time you hold back a reaction, every time you swallow something that bothered you, every time you choose peace, instead of saying how you actually feel, it doesn't disappear. It just stays with you. And after a while, you stop expecting people to notice. You stop thinking anyone will ask. So you adjust. You become even quieter, even easier, even less demanding. Not because you have nothing inside, but because you've learned it's safer to keep it there. And the more you do that, the more people get used to a version of you that never needs anything. That's where the problem starts. Because when people believe you're always okay, they stop looking closer. And when no one looks closer, you can be hurting right in front of them and still feel completely unseen. Silence doesn't always mean peace. Sometimes it only means you got used to not saying anything. You let things pass. Not because they were small, but because you didn't want to turn them into a bigger problem. So you stay quiet. You tell yourself it's fine. You tell yourself you'll get over it. You tell yourself it's not worth bringing up. But your body remembers what your mouth never said. Later that night, it comes back. A look, a sentence. A moment that felt wrong. And you replay it longer than you should. Not because you enjoy it, but because some part of you knows it mattered. You just never gave it a place to go. That is what silence hides. Not nothing, not peace. Wait, small disappointments, small betrayals, small moments where you felt unseen, dismissed, or hurt. Each one seems minor by itself, but they do not stay separate for long. They collect. And after a while, you don't feel sharply wounded. You just feel heavy, slower, more distant from yourself. You still smile. You still show up. You still do what needs to be done. But inside, something has changed. You are no longer simply quiet. You are carrying things that never got spoken, never got processed, never got released. And because you have carried them for so long, the weight starts to feel normal. That is the danger. When hidden pain becomes normal, you stop asking whether something inside you is getting weaker. You just keep functioning, while your heart quietly learns how to hide deeper. The real danger isn't just that you carry things alone. It's that after a while, you stop knowing what you're carrying. At first, you notice it. You feel hurt. You feel off. You feel something isn't right. But you don't say anything. You move on. Then it happens again and again. And slowly, your reactions get quieter. Not because it hurts less, but because you're getting used to holding it. You stop questioning it. You stop naming it. You just feel tired. And that's where it changes. Because when you don't face pain directly, it doesn't disappear. It settles. It becomes part of how you move through the world. You become more careful, more distant, less open than you used to be. Not on purpose, just naturally. You think you're becoming more peaceful, more mature, more controlled. But sometimes, that's not peace. It's withdrawal. It's a quiet kind of disconnection that doesn't look dramatic from the outside. You still function. You still show up. You still do what's expected. But inside, something feels harder to reach. Even for you, you don't always know what you feel anymore. You just know something is off, and you keep going anyway. That's why this matters more than it seems. Because when silence goes on too long, you don't just hide pain from others. You start losing access to yourself. And once that happens, you're not just unseen by people. You're unseen, even from within. This is where God matters in a different way. Not as an idea, not as something you say because it sounds right, but as someone who sees what you don't say. Because the truth is, you're not always honest about what you feel. Not because you're fake, but because you've learned to move past things too quickly. You tell yourself you're okay before you even check if you are. And over time, that becomes normal. That's where God steps in. Not to judge you, not to correct you, but to see you. The part of you that stays quiet, the part that got used to being overlooked, the part that kept going without asking for anything back. God doesn't look at how calm you seem. He looks at what's underneath. He sees the moments you didn't react, the things you let go of, the weight you decided to carry instead of share. And he doesn't call that strength. He calls it something that needs care. Because being able to endure everything doesn't mean you are meant to. And being needed by everyone doesn't mean you are being held. That's why you need God more than you think. Not because you're failing, but because you've been handling too much without ever letting it be seen. And at some point, something in you needs more than silence. It needs to be known. The truth is, your silence isn't the problem. It's what your silence is protecting. Because being quiet doesn't make you strong by itself. What matters is what's happening underneath it. And for a lot of kind, silent people, what's underneath is not peace. It's pressure. You've been the one who understands. The one who lets things go. The one who doesn't make things harder. And over time, that becomes your identity. You don't even question it anymore. You just keep being that person, even when it costs you something. That's the part people don't see. You can be dependable and still be exhausted. You can be calm and still feel disconnected. You can be kind and still feel alone. That's why this matters. Because if you never stop to look at what you're carrying, you'll keep calling it just who you are, when it's not. It's just what you got used to. And without something deeper, without someone who actually sees that part of you, you'll keep living like this, quiet on the outside, but slowly worn down on the inside. There's another danger in all this. After a while, silence stops feeling like a choice. It starts feeling like who you are. You become the person who says less, needs less, asks for less. And at first, that can look like maturity. But sometimes, it's something else. Sometimes, it's what happens when a person has been ignored too many times. So now, instead of risking being misunderstood again, you say nothing. Instead of asking for comfort, you tell yourself to deal with it alone. Instead of bringing your pain into the light, you make your world smaller, so no one can touch that part of you. That is not freedom. That is self-protection becoming identity. And once that happens, you don't just hide your pain from people. You build a whole life around never having to reveal it. That is why some kind, silent people look so controlled on the outside while feeling so far away from themselves on the inside. They are not simply quiet. They are guarded. And when silence becomes identity, only something deeper than human attention can begin to break that wall open. That is one more reason they need God more than they realize. So if this feels familiar, if you're the kind of person who stays quiet and carries more than people see, this is something you shouldn't ignore. You don't need God because you're falling apart. You need Him because you've been holding yourself together for too long. And doing that alone slowly wears you down. At some point, silence isn't strength anymore. It's just something you got used to. And if you never stop to look at it, you'll keep calling that weight normal. But it's not. You weren't meant to carry everything by yourself. You weren't meant to feel unseen, even in your strongest moments. So don't keep pushing it down. Don't keep telling yourself it's fine. Bring it out. Let it be seen. Because the strongest thing you can do right now is stop pretending you don't need anything. And finally, allow yourself to be known